cuddling his newborn twin girls protectively. TV survival expert Ed Stafford says he is at the start of a bigger adventure than any he has faced before. The first person to walk the length of the Amazon River, Ed smiles at little Molly and Millie in his arms and admits, "This makes all my other challenges insignificant. It's the most meaningful thing I could ever do." The girls, officially named Mary and Camilla, were born at the end of August. Ed, 44, married to fellow explorer Laura Bingham, 27, with whom he also has a son, Ranulph, describes them as little bundles of joy. Poignantly, their birth follows the miscarriage of another set of twin girls at 14 weeks, in December 2018. Ed says, "What changed was that neither one of us basked in the joy of pregnancy quite as much as when we were pregnant with Run, or with the twins, before we lost them. I think we needed them to get out and be healthy. We didn't let ourselves love them, almost. Both of us were more emotionally guarded about the experience, which is natural, I think. When you're guarded, you're not getting your hopes up in case something does go wrong. Not wanting to dwell on that, but thank goodness we've got through the risky stage, and they're both healthy, and both beautiful little girls, and that chapter has finally been put to bed." Close quote. Ed says, having Molly and Millie has been a therapeutic process. He explains, "We're just in that blissful stage of loving each other lots and no arguments. It's really nice. The fact that they're twin girls, and the twins we lost, were girls as well. Somebody planted the seed in Laura's mind that, potentially, their souls have just been passed on." Laura quite bought into that, I think, so it feels quite healing, the whole experience. Close quote. The only upset was not being allowed to be at his wife's side in hospital. He says, because of COVID, and because they were twins, Laura had to spend the first night in hospital on her own. She lost quite a lot of blood. Laura bonded immediately with them, but it took me a few more days. I've definitely got there now, though, and have exactly the same connection that I do with my little boy. It's different, but it's just as beautiful. The birth of the twins was a whirlwind for Ed, as he finished filming his latest series of First Man Out only last December, with Laura getting pregnant shortly after. In the show, Ed goes head-to-head with other survival experts, racing against them in some of the most dangerous environments in the world. He says, "The whole thing is great for keeping you grounded. You are constantly having to think outside the box and going through continual learning." 8 years ago, I spent 60 days on an island for Discovery Channel as my initial survival experiment. It was a harrowing experience. I needed counseling and had quite severe post-psychological issues. Going into coastal environments, all those feelings come back intensely. As soon as I'm having to smash a coconut open on a beach and scrabble for a little bit of fluid from it, I get to quite a desperate place inside me. In this series we did one episode which was in South China. We were island hopping, and it was the sort of episode that let me put those demons to bed. I was intimidated at first, and found the run-up to it quite unsettling, but then I realized I've got more competent than I was 8 years ago, and am capable of looking after myself. And I made this raft cross between the islands really quickly, and it felt like I'd come of age in that specific environment. I think it's really important to keep putting yourself in places where you are really being challenged on that level. Close quote. But as the show gets set to air in the UK, Ed admits that becoming a father of 3 has changed his perspective on what it means to be an adventurer and what he would like to achieve. He says, "I think I'm more cautious than I was by myself, definitely. Someone once asked if I'd ever walk the Amazon again, and you know that I wouldn't because quite frankly it was reckless. But I was 33 and didn't have kids, didn't have a wife and kind of didn't care either. It was gung-ho, but it was a different chapter of life. It would be inappropriate for me to do that now, because there's a responsibility there to provide. I need to find that balance. I don't want to jack it all in and find a really sensible job in a bank. I don't want to have no risks in my life. It's important not to stagnate and to keep on your toes." Close quote. But he adds, "I think my family all agree that life is about living. It sounds cliché, but we're so prone to be aware of fear and hurting yourself, but the bigger risk is not living life to the full." Close quote. With this in mind, Ed already has big plans for his newborn daughters. He says, "I think when the twins are 3 I'd love to do something with them, and I'd like to perhaps push the boundaries a bit. Maybe we could do a longer adventure with them, or there's been ideas bandied around about doing it in a cold weather area, like Alaska. We'd be able to enjoy poaching and working together as a family to get a home built in time before the snow hits. That sort of thing would be super exciting to do. One of the negatives of this amazing and fortunate job is time away from the family. At least if you are filming together, that takes that negative away." After a career of wrangling with snakes, carving his own spears and surviving on a diet of bugs, Ed says becoming a parent gives a whole new perspective, making all his previous challenges pale in comparison. He says, "It's the most meaningful thing I could ever do. I don't believe you are what you do. I have a job, and it happens to be an extraordinarily cool one, but who I am as a man is far more a father and a husband than being an adventurer or a survivalist. I think my family is everything. 6 years ago I had the same job and I would come back from a trip to an empty flat in London, and I remember you just feel empty. What's the asterisk point in having your name in the title of a show if you come back and you haven't got that hub of love to return to? I don't underestimate how fortunate I am to have such a cool job. But if one had to go, I wouldn't have to think about it for a split second. Family for me is everything." Close quote.